the island of Jamaica, at 62 years old, is a country with many, many issues. Issues relating to well-being, safety, security, public health, education, social capital. We have one of the highest murder rates in the world. We have issues to do with governance. Yeah, several. And where governance is concerned, it's been like a roller coaster for us in Jamaica over these past 62 years of political independence, where we have tried to break out of the so-called market capitalist global order. There was a time when the late Michael Manley tried his best to get us and the rest of the world to subscribe to a new international economic order when he was a vice president of Socialist International, and many of you may not know of that. But that was a mantra of Mr. Manley. And Jamaica, through his leadership, was at the forefront of that. That came to naught. Yes? That was a period of the ideological struggle between capitalism and communism, market economy, or a state-led economy as models for economic development and social advancement. That was a period, especially after the ferment of the 1960s and then 1970s, when Manley came to power. And with his defeat in 1980 and the triumph of the market economy, globalization, that was, what is the word? Put asunder. And we settled around a philosophy that says the market must drive our economic development. Yes, we settled on that. Manley himself, when he came back to power in 1989, stressed continuity after the Siaga years between 1980 and 1989. Manley, as a platform, as a strategy, said we must continue the road of the market economy while trying to remain faithful to his social welfare policies to uplift the mass of the ordinary people. And in all of this, we muddled along. But we have never really, as a country, had a sustained and serious discussion about governance, and how we can reform, refashion, rethink our political arrangements in terms of how we choose governments, choose our leaders, how we govern ourselves. We have never really had a sustained national discussion about it. We have had it in fits, in parts, in moments the several attempts at constitutional reform, but it has never been sustained. Yeah? Like how we had that long period of national debate between whether we're going to be a center-left or center-right economic model in terms of the role of the market versus the state. We have never really had that kind of sustained discussion about governance. Where am I going with this? It has to do with the issue of something that has emerged over the last 3-4 days about unexplained wealth orders, UWOs, in Jamaica. Part of the problem we have in Jamaica, especially where governance is concerned, is a problem with perceptions, and some will say realities, of corruption in the country. And we're talking about corruption in virtually its generic sense, meaning we are a corrupt country. We are a corrupt people. When we get stopped by the traffic police and we're asking for a bly, that is being corrupt. Yes? When we go to get our driver's licenses and we pay for them, pay for it, that is being corrupt. So that's one level of corruption. Then there's the other levels of corruption. Yes? The other levels of corruption. When we have people who abuse their high public offices, yes, to generate unexplained wealth to themselves. That is also corruption. Yeah? And we see it in our Blue Dot polls, where Jamaicans are extremely concerned now about the levels of corruption in the country. And you know, the debate now about unexplained wealth orders come in this context. You have the outstanding, live, controversial issue of the Prime Minister's uncertified statutory declarations. And that is being hotly contested now. The Prime Minister's quite rightly taken it to court for judicial review. He feels that he has been unfairly, illegally treated. And when you read his how many page affidavit, he sets out his case. That is to be decided. Yeah? When we're looking at the effectiveness of the Integrity Commission, when there are questions about whether it needs to be transformed, as some would say, wheel and come again in terms of how it does its job, all of this is about governance. All of it. This issue of unexplained wealth orders, yes, now came roaring back because the government of Jamaica has been on record. It has put it in its throne speeches for a number of years that it will be introducing legislation to give the authorities another tool, another weapon in their arsenal to fight corruption through UWOs, unexplained wealth orders. Essentially, an unexplained wealth order is a requirement under the law, yeah, that says, you, John Brown, you have here $10, $20 million. You're unemployed, or if you're employed, you are a casual laborer. Yeah, your income doesn't match your wealth. How do you come by it? How did you get it? And you're asked to explain. Yeah, you're asked to explain. And the government of Jamaica signed on to this for some time now. And then last week, the Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of National Security, Dr. Horace Chang, was reported in the Gleaner, beg your pardon, was reported in the Gleaner saying that the government was going to defer this. It was going to delay action on this for a number of reasons. Reasons that were not very clear in that reporting. And of course, civil society, several stakeholders in the National Consensus on Crime tackled the Holness administration over this, raising concerns about the decision, despite the promises by the government to implement it in the country's legislative framework. Yes? I heard Dr. Chang this morning making a response, and you will hear him a little later in this commentary, that listen, it's not about wanting to abandon it, but there are certain constitutional legal hurdles to overcome. However, the point I wish to make this morning, the politics of the moment. The politics of the moment seems to be eluding some people in the Holness administration. They're not reading the political room at all. How is it you're going to fashion a response that could somehow be interpreted that you're going to abandon unexplained wealth orders at this time? When the leader of the country, the Prime Minister, the leader of the party, and the government is under defense, under attack about this matter of corruption. Timing is just way off. Bad. It's not politically smart, it's politically dunce. Yes. So we have had from a representative from the Jamaica umbrella group of churches, Reverend Dixon, saying, no. Here's what Reverend Dixon said.
The stakeholders that comprise the CMOC have expressed concerns with we could say, deprioritization of the unexplained wealth orders as part of the toolkit for dealing with fight against corruption, alongside the other mechanisms that have been put in place to deal with this issue. We're concerned because we think it is an essential part of this toolkit because it will help to close an important gap that presently exists in the fight against corruption.
That's Reverend Newton Dixon. And what sparked that? That recent interview with the Gleaner, in which the National Security Minister, the Deputy Prime Minister, was reported as saying that constitutional concerns behind the government's decisions to defer the UWO. He also was reported as saying that existing laws are strong enough to address such crimes. a group of 12 stakeholders, argued that such a decision would undermine the fight against corruption. Yeah? And they also took issue with the government's proposal to amend the law governing the Integrity Commission. Reverend Dixon said both decisions are troubling.
The deprioritization of the unexplained work orders alongside the stated intention through, I believe, is action in the courts to address some elements of the Integrity Commission Act together create a significant amount of concern among the stakeholders.
Significant amount of concerns. Yes? Given what is happening in the country and the politics of this issue of corruption. Well, I heard Dr. Chang this morning speaking with Tona and Sandre about this matter. And he said, one, they have not abandoned, the government has not abandoned its decision to introduce UWOs. Yeah? And then he said the policy, yeah, on how to craft the law and to apply the law was still at the concept stage and is yet to receive approval from Cabinet. Yes? According to the Deputy Prime Minister, the government's researchers and legal experts are facing constitutional hurdles.
Laws are not written by ministers of government. And I think you have enough legal training to understand fully. Laws are not written like that, like a letter from the minister. There are processes involved which go beyond legal advice. And ideas put out on unexplained red orders are in a number of jurisdictions, including Zimbabwe, Kenya, and UK. The idea seems is of value, then has to be investigated and interrogated and researched by those in policy to see how you can create the policy to satisfy the requirements that you're seeking to get. That research has to proceed over time and an appropriate policy developed, which will satisfy also the demands of our Constitution, which is the supreme instrument of law in the country. That may take time, 1 day, 2 days, or 2 years. In fact, in the UK, which has no codified constitution, the expert said to me, look, Minister, don't get too concerned. It takes us 2 years to get a complex law passed in the UK. You have a codified constitution. You have to look at how your capacity can be with that. Deal with a number of issues. That is just a plain fact. After the policy is developed, it has to go through the Attorney General, legal reform, and the drafters, who know has to go through and see to not only how to draft it, but that in drafting it, that the policy, in fact, will satisfy the issues raised, the bars raised by the Constitution. In the passing of the Charter of Rights, a very recent legislation, relatively speaking, the protection of the accused was increased. The bar was raised, and government, who would be the accuser, have to prove beyond the shadow of a doubt. In fact, to go behind the Charter of Rights, the fundamental Charter of Rights, such as right to privacy, right not to self-incriminate, right to property. I think the comment that was used by one of our learned judges, one of our outstanding judges, is that ending to breach that must be manifestly justified, which means by the time you go for UWO in our system, you literally have all the required proof you want, and that evidence you wish, and that evidence will be used to continue investigation. So it's not a barrier, but it will be a supplemental effect which may bring you quicker response if the person decides to cooperate. Most of them are going to take you as far as the Privy Council to in fact protect their right to privacy, property, and not to self-incriminate. Technically, what you're doing in an unexplained result is saying, look, we find that no, we need to know more. You tell me that. And I said, no, I don't have to tell you anything.
So that is the constitutional hurdle Dr. Chang and the government is saying we need to address. Yes? He went further to say that, listen, they haven't abandoned, but there are also other investigative tools available in the country's anti-corruption regime.
We know it can be of value, but we have a lot of tools to deal with in fighting financial crimes. On the process of crime, which we have amended twice since I've been minister. So we're not sitting around doing nothing to increase the number of designated agents, etc. that comes under proceeds of crime. So we can do wider investigation. And there are a lot of things listed there, from money laundering, cash and seizure forfeiture. I can list maybe 20 or 30 items. Provide for the issuance of certain seizure warrants, provide account monitoring, investigation of disclosure orders, and I can give you a list of them, 20 or 30 items. The FID has enormous powers in investigation. The Larceny Act, the Criminal Justice Suppression Crime Act, the Cyber Crime Act, the Corruption Prevention Act, Common Law Offences, etc. Plus the institutions that are required is maybe even as critical or more critical sometimes than legislation, because there, if you look at the number of countries who have them, without naming them, you see that some of them have no institution to fight corruption, but they have the law, and therefore nothing happens. Our MOCA, FID, the Counter-Terror CTOC, Intellectual Property Rights, Communication, CFCBF, Police, BPP, Customs, and in fact other agencies involved, which operates under Fusion Center and under the Joel team, which deals with investigating financial crime, in particular, a lot of crime, which is alluded to from time to time, but all financial crimes. So we have a suite of legislative activity and institutions which this government has funded more than any other government in the history of the country to prepare to fight corruption.
Dr. Horace Chang, the Deputy Prime Minister, pushing back. Yes? After the break, you're going to hear from a member of CMOC, Commander George Overton. Yes? His response to what we heard there from Dr. Chang. So, based on what we heard there from Dr. Chang, is an argument, a case that ought to be factored into the debate, into the discourse. The Charter of Fundamental Rights, yes, has lifted the bar to protect the right to privacy. And, of course, there's a traditional, well-established judicial concept about the right not to self-incriminate. How do we get over that hurdle? Yes? But in the noise that is taking place in the country now, will we listen to him, or for other considerations, positions are hardening, not based on reason, but on political objectives? And this takes me back to where I said we need to have this sustained discussion about governance. And especially, we need to have that discussion outside of an election campaign. Because if it takes place during an election campaign, we're not going to do ourselves well. This is now caught up in politics. So very few are going to listen to the rationality advanced by Dr. Chang. I've asked a couple attorneys to join me here later this week, to take a serious look at the merits of what we're hearing from Dr. Chang and from the other side. That's the most we can do. Yeah? But it doesn't take away from my fundamental point. If we're going to be serious about developing this country, then we have to have these discussions. The universities have to help us in doing the research, yes, doing the seminars, the workshops, yes, so that we can illuminate and think through what we are about to do given our circumstances, but also drawing on the experiences of other countries, other peoples. The United Kingdom has introduced unexplained wealth orders. Has it been a roaring success? Based on what I'm reading so far, no. I gather the Bahamas has also introduced it. Where is the Bahamas where that is concerned? Yeah? Well, this morning, thanks to Nationwide, the member of the Crime Monitoring and Oversight Consensus, Commander George Overton, he also added a perspective, saying that investigators seeking to use an unexplained wealth order in their probe would need to satisfy certain criteria, yeah, before going before a judge to seek an order.
We've been trying over the last couple of years to get persons in the official financial system, as it were, and a lot of people have been weary in trusting the financial system. So do you say to somebody who have saved their millions of dollars in their house because they fear the financial system that, hey, you have unexplained wealth, whenever they decide that we're going to now officially
but
enter?
the dots have to connect. I can't just come to you and say, this is this. I have to come to you and I say, look, the dots don't add up. You have $10 million in your bank account. Your tax returns and the tax information says 0. Your employment says 0. Explain. The dots, it can't be that I just walk up to you and because you have a profile and say, explain. I have to have dots that connect that I ask you to explain. And it is that I have to go before the judge with.
Yeah.
For him to issue the order.
Yeah. That it's true. What has been placed on the table is for there to be a criteria, a number of benchmarks that you have to meet before you go before a judge.
And ask for it. So
right.
It's when the dots can't connect.
Yeah.
It's when the dots can't connect that you go to the judge and say, look, we have investigated this. These dots don't connect to these dots over here, which are a requirement of the system.
Yeah.
We need the individual to explain to us.
That is the voice of George Overton. The voice you heard first at the beginning of the clip was Sondre Roden, yes? But that is the voice we should have prepared you for, George Overton, yeah? So that is what Mr. Commander Overton is saying, that listen, it's not about picking up somebody and say, explain. They would have initiated an investigation prior to getting there and say, listen, there's something to be explained here. Yeah? That is when you go to before a judge and ask for permission, approval, yeah, to seek an order, which must be factored into what we are about to do or not to do. But we are going to try and get an attorney, a couple of attorneys who can help us, yeah, to bring some more clarity on this. It's 21 minutes going up to 11 o'clock. I'm not going to deal with the whole matter of the road fatalities on the road. I saw last night an accident all over social media, 4 high-end vehicles on the north-south highway, yeah, careless, reckless driving. I see this morning we're learning from the police, Peace Deb, that they have nabbed a driver, 3 warrants outstanding, 170 tickets, and they finally catch up with him. Yeah. The debate about the Emancipendence holiday, yes, the former Prime Minister, P.J. Patterson, says no, it's a severe, yeah, severe, what's the term he used? It would be a severe setback, yeah, or something. Let me try and find the exact clip, yeah, about that. Essentially, what Patterson is saying: no, not at all. It should not be allowed. Allow it to stay as it is. Oh, the term is it would be a severe violation of our ancestry if we were to disrupt what we have. According to the former Prime Minister, the idea that the separation is inconvenient must be firmly rejected. He's also urging the Culture Minister, Olivia Grange, to reject the proposal from the PSOJ. But the PSOJ President, Metri Siaga, is maintaining that the extended holiday period will ultimately contribute significantly to the country's cultural and economic output.
The PSOJ values Emancipation Day and Independence Day as two of the most important holidays that we have in Jamaica. And we want to do nothing whatsoever to diminish those holidays, but rather to give people more of an opportunity to celebrate them. And we are proposing that the holidays be celebrated over the weekend so that people will get a long weekend every year on Emancipation and Independence Days. Those holidays would be celebrated on the Monday and the Friday as holidays. We would not be changing the days, or we're not proposing a change of days. All we're proposing is that the holidays be put on the Monday and on the Friday.
Metri Siaga, the president of the PSOJ. Well, that is not going down well. The Chief Justice Brian Sykes has also come out against it. You heard there from the former Prime Minister. Yeah, a number of Jamaicans saying no, let it remain as is. Yeah. It's the 7th of October, Monday the 7th of October. Exactly a year ago, we woke up to news of the horrific Hamas terrorist attacks that killed more than 1,200 Israelis. And since that day a year ago, the world has been witnessing the war on Gaza between Hamas and Israel. And that has now spread to Lebanon. In Gaza, 41,000 Palestinian women and children and men have been murdered, killed. In Lebanon, more than 2,000 people dead. And the world is looking on virtually helplessly. Helplessly. The American President Joseph Biden has failed to exercise any real leverage over Benjamin Netanyahu, the Israeli Prime Minister, who is now being hailed as a hero after suffering severe loss in popularity because he has killed the Hezbollah leader, Hassan Nasrallah, and several of his commanders, virtually crippling Hezbollah. So Israel is glowing in the aftermath of that success. But the fact is, a year after October 7, we're now worse off. The Israeli hostages who were taken, several of whom have died, a few have been returned, but there are still 101 being held captive. Netanyahu speaks about them, but he's not really serious about having them returned. So they are still to be returned. We have witnessed 41,000 Palestinian lives snuffed out. Gaza is ruined. The region is seeing war. Lebanon has been invaded. Hezbollah, yes, who, let us be very clear, they chose to attack Israel the day after Hamas did. And Israel always, like any other nation, has a right to defend itself. But where are we this morning, a year later? The world, and the region in particular, is in an ever-growing war. People are being killed. Regional instabilities setting in. With the attack by Israel on the attack of Israel on Iran and Iran on Israel, There are fears about global oil prices, what is going to be the effect on world economy. And frankly, we have in the White House a president who's a lame duck, more than a lame duck. Yeah? Benjamin Netanyahu doesn't take him seriously. Yeah? The world is a much more dangerous place this morning. Much more dangerous place.